County Road 19 West. Matt's in the seat, ready to go, and we'll let you present this report to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The subject lands are located on the corner of Brantford Road and Norfolk County Road 19 West within the hamlet of Vanessa. The application has been received to seek a site-specific official plan amendment to permit the severance of 4 residential lots within the hamlet area. Typically, we would require a plan of subdivision when it's this many lots, and that's the purpose of the OPA. The subject lands are both zoned and designated within the hamlet area. It's kind of hard to see on the big screen, but hopefully you can see on your smaller screens. This is the proposed layout of the 4 lots. As you can see, they're sized accordingly to a geotechnical study that was provided by the applicant, which was for water drainage and to ensure they were sized appropriately for a well and septic. Planning staff have reviewed the policies of the PPS and have concluded that the subject application meets the intent of our official plan and is consistent with the policies of the PPS and recommend approval. I will say that we have received 1 letter of opposition, and it's included as an appendix in the report. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Matt. Councillor Black, question to staff.
You referred to the letter of opposition. I read it, and I think it had to do with concern over the well and drainage. So would that be addressed through the applicant's due diligence on drainage issues and that? Would that take care of that problem?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the applicant did provide a geotechnical study that didn't suggest there would be any adverse effects of those lots being created and new well systems going on those lots. And in addition, our Public Works department has reviewed this application and didn't have any concerns. There will be some conditions that'll flow out of the severances eventually, but in terms of the land use change here, there was no concerns.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Oliver, then Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I was waiting my turn, I was searching to see if I could find where I saw this. I thought in the staff report, but Matt, am I correct in remembering that somewhere in the staff report is a recommendation from Public Works and Environmental Services that a traffic study be required for this proposal?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Yeah, and also stormwater management plan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's also correct. I will say the traffic letter was received and has been circulated to staff, and I'll let Lee speak to that. She is the expert there.
But the traffic letter meaning fulfilling the requirement for the traffic study? Is that what you're suggesting?
Through the Mayor to Council, we require a traffic impact study for every development that occurs. It can be anything from a single paragraph indicating that due to the use of this, they're not expecting any additional traffic to occur, or it could end up being for a large, 1,000-unit subdivision, 18 binders of information. In this case, we call them all traffic impact studies. We work with the applicant to figure out the scope of the traffic impact study to match the type of application. So we've already received the letter from them that satisfies that requirement. Yeah. With respect to stormwater management, absolutely, we especially require stormwater management for all the developments because we run into situations, and I can think of today, we probably had 5 different complaints that came in today for water coming off of adjacent properties onto somebody's property that's in a new development. And so we have to make sure that it's all addressed as part of the application to ensure that the future property owners don't have any conflicts with it.
I understand all of that, and I appreciate that, Lee. I guess my only concern, Mr. Mayor, was given the size of these lots at 1.5 acres on average, it was my assessment when I read the report that any impact on adjacent properties would probably be negligible because this is, after all, Norfolk sand, as we all know there in particular. And so I was surprised, quite frankly, to see traffic study and stormwater management plan required. But I think Lee has addressed my first one quite adequately, and I thank her for that. But I guess I'm still hoping you will scope the requirements of the stormwater. I can understand grading, but I question the need for a stormwater management plan overall, that's all.
Through the mayor, we scope all of them to be relevant to the size of that. We're actually aware of a drainage issue in that area, so that makes it even that much more relevant for this one.
Councillor Brunton, thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor Luke. My question is with the water well, I assume 4 new wells out there. Who does the analysis of the existing well and the impact it might have on, or with the new wells being constructed? Like flow, if there's 4 more wells, I don't know what the water situation is like. Who would do that? Would you make the applicant that's doing this, the new lots look at that, or how do you deal with that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would have been addressed through the submitted geotechnical study. The agent is here. I can ask that the agent address how that was addressed in their study.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions of staff? Not at the moment. Mr. Rowe, you are the agent, if you want to come forward. I assume that's Mr. Direct with you? No? Oh,
Flying solo this evening.
okay.
In this particular application, we did consult with county staff, and I guess at this point I'm kind of trained as to what's required. So I contacted our traffic consultant out of London, and he's accustomed to not only this municipality but others to do a scoped traffic impact study, and he has a pretty good understanding of what the county requires, and we do a 2 or 3 page letter suffice for that. We did a hydrogeological report to deal with primarily nitrates, which if you're on sandy soils can be an issue, and it determines the size of the lots and that type of thing. They also look at existing wells and what the yields are from those wells, so that we can be assured, especially when we're talking almost 2 acre lots or 1.5 acre size lots, that there isn't going to be a problem. So we've covered all the bases off that we would normally do through a plan of subdivision, but because there's only 4 lots and we have addressed the issues that county staff have had, staff were comfortable to recommend that we not have to do a plan of subdivision. As far as stormwater management, and it's interesting in this case because municipal drain or something is really quite a distance, and what we're looking at is using techniques that basically retain the water on site, and I've had conversations with Public Works and with the Conservation Authority, and they see this as a pretty good test case for that type of thing. In Oxford County in particular, and in Middlesex, the Upper Thames Conservation Authority kind of leading the way in this, and our Conservation Authority down here has been working with them. So they're kind of looking at this as almost a pilot project for that type of thing. So as I say, we've covered off all the bases on this, so it should be pretty straightforward at this point. Thank you.
Any questions, Councillor Columbus?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dave, do you anticipate for stormwater drainage any swales between the lots?
Yeah, that's we've actually submitted some preliminary plans. We've got DeMeyers and Tilsonburg on this one to the county, and that's what they're looking at, swales that will retain the water and then feed that water into the groundwater, as opposed to just running off quickly.
Okay, and I know in developments like this, we've had them in other places where once the houses are built, the people want overhead street lights. And is there any proposed overhead street lights along the road?
No.
Or is that up to the Public Works?
I guess it's up to Public Works if they're going to ask for that, yeah.
Okay.
No sidewalks either, so.
No sidewalk.
Other questions for Mr. Rowe? Councillor Height?
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Through you to the deputation. In the letter that we had with the concerns, they mentioned about the trees surrounding their property. Do you know if the development will be looking at chopping down those trees?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, there may be some that have to go. It's almost like a 30-foot high cedar hedge, because these were planted as obviously windbreaks for farming. And that's part of the attractiveness of the property. So I'm assuming where possible, those are going to be maintained.
Any further? Thank you for now, Mr. Rowe. I would ask if there's any other person in attendance this evening who wishes to speak in support of this application. They could come to the microphone, please. Is there anyone in attendance this evening that wishes to speak in opposition or in general to this application? Anything further from this council? A motion, please, to close this public meeting. Height has moved, Black has seconded that we now close the public meeting. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay. Recommendation from staff is on page 205. Councillor Black.
Move the recommendation in the
Thank you,
report.
sir. I will need a seconder. Councillor Oliver has seconded. Black moved. Oliver seconded. That the application by Direct Farms Limited, Francis Gerald Direct, 2021 Brantford Road, Vanessa, affecting the lands described as part of Lot 3, Block 3, Plan 49B, Geographic Township of Windham in Norfolk County, is to amend our Norfolk County official plan. The file number is before you, and it's recommended for approval for reasons as set out in this report 1836, and that public input has been received for this application and therefore will be considered as part of the decision. Discussion on the motion. I hear none. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Go to page 235, please. We have three more applications to deal with. I really appreciate the patience people have shown this evening in sitting through a long meeting to get to their application or their interest in an application. Page 235, staff report 18-37. An application to be received. This is to amend our Norfolk County zoning bylaw to rezone the subject lands from urban residential to urban residential, from R2 to R3, to recognize the existing fourplex. The application also require relief of the following existing deficiencies. There they are. 1.19 meter from the required lot frontage of 19.95 meters to permit a frontage of 18.31. And 0.39 meters from the required front yard setback of 6 meters to permit a setback of 5.61 meters. 1.75 meters from the minimum interior side yard setback of 3 meters to permit a setback of 1.25 meters. 3 parking spaces from the required 6 parking spaces to permit 5 spaces. Irene Nora McNeil and agent MHN Lawyers has put forth the application. It affects the lands described as 181 Dean Street in Simcoe. Kayla DeLay. No, Kayla's not here. Kayla's supposed to be here. Where's Kayla tonight? She's playing hooky? Pam, are you going to give this? Oh, my apologies, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would be happy to present this on behalf
Appreciate
of
it, Pam.
This is a simple application to bring a property into conformity. As you outline, the subject lands are located here in Simcoe at 181 Dean Street. To give you a little context, the property over here is our friends at Indwell. The subject lands are designated urban residential, and they're zoned urban residential type 2, which does allow singles and duplexes. The purpose of this application is to change the zoning from R2 to R3 to recognize the existing fourplex, and the application also identifies existing deficiencies. And there has been no public input received to date. The lot is considered a through lot and has frontage on both Kent Street South and Dean Street. The lands contain a single detached dwelling being used as a fourplex, and the fourplex is currently an illegal use, and this application will simply bring the property into compliance. The agent and applicant has provided staff with documentation suggesting that the non-complying use of the fourplex has been in existence in the R2 zone since approximately 1968 with no complaints or issues. The urban residential designation does permit a variety of housing types, and the fourplex meets the minimum medium density requirements, as well as all the character requirements, which are listed on pages 238 and 239 of your council agenda. The R3 zone does permit a fourplex. Planning staff recommend approval of this application. We do note that there is sufficient space for the 4-unit parking spaces and 1 visitor parking space, for a total of 5 parking spaces where 8 are required. It should be noted that there is on-street parking, which is available in close proximity, and also because the subject lands are close to the Simcoe downtown, we estimate that clients may not need all the parking on site that's required. So again, we recognize that it's consistent with the PPS and the OP, and we do recommend approval.
Thank you, Pam Dusling. Questions to staff? I'll start with Councillor Columbus and then Black.
Mr. Mayor, to Pam, this has been a fourplex for 50 years, and how come it came to light at this time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it's because there's a pending sale of the property, but I will ask the agent to confirm that.
Councillor Black?
I could confirm it myself because I know the owners, and it has been a fourplex for a long time. It is a through lot, and just a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff. Even the 5 parking spaces, I know the parking back there, it's never been a problem. It's in the back, but it is a through lot, and there's still room for more vehicles on that rear portion of the lot that fronts on Kent Street. Could that not be utilized?
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, I probably we'd benefit of the agent asking or answering that question. We've looked at the property, and we know that 5 parking spaces fit well on the property and function well. But perhaps Maria can answer
well,
first.
there probably is no need for the extra ones.
Further questions? Is the applicant Irene McNeil in attendance? Okay, you can go to the microphone and I'll get right to you. You're with MHN, correct?
Correct.
I got you now, okay.
So I'm
Yeah,
here,
go ahead.
here on behalf of the applicant, Maria Kinkle, and don't have any further comments other than the planning report. And just to address maybe some of the questions. At this point, the area that has been paved and set up for parking at the lot is only fits 5, and that has been in use for eons. We are just shy 7 years from the 1960 initial bylaw that made this area to be R2 zoning, which didn't permit right from that point on. And the people that were alive and well enough to confirm and sign statutory declarations only got us to 1968. So I was just 7 years shy of that, and that's why we're here tonight.
Any questions for this young lady? Thank you for that information. Is there anyone else in attendance this evening who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone in attendance this evening who would like to speak in general or in opposition to this application? Anything further from council? I'll need a motion to close this public meeting. Councillor Columbus has moved. Councillor Black has seconded to close the public meeting. Those in favor? Public meeting is now closed. Recommendation for approval from staff on page 235. What's your wishes? Councillor Oliver? Councillor Brunton? Moved and seconded that the application of Irene Nora McNeil to 181 Dean Street in Simcoe affects the lands, part of lots 4 and 11, lots 3 and 10, block 113, plan 182, urban area of Simcoe, Norfolk County. This is to amend the Norfolk County zoning bylaw 1Z 2014. File number is listed there. It's for approval for reasons set out in report number 1837. No public input has been received for this application and therefore will not be considered as part of our decision. Discussion on this motion of approval. If not, those in favor? That's carried, and thank you very much. Page 247. Excuse me. This is staff report 18-40. An application has been received to consider an amendment to Norfolk County zoning bylaw to modify existing special provision 14.832. Its subject lands as the site-specific provisions are no longer applicable. The development proposes the construction of a 3-story mixed-use building with commercial on the main level and residential apartments. The requested amendment is to allow the development to proceed with an interior side yard abutting a residential zone of 0.9 meters, whereas 3 meters is required. Additionally, the amendment will deem King Street as the front lot line and rescind the existing bylaw. Dymatic Tooling Solutions, Inc. and Agent Civic Planning Solutions, Inc. has put forth this application affecting the lands described as 171 King Street, and of course, we're talking Delhi here. Notice how I looked before I announced that Shannon Van Dalen is amongst us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
I'm a slow learner, but I'm getting there. We're ready for your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening. This presentation and public meeting is with respect to a zoning bylaw amendment for property known as 171 King Street in Delhi. As stated, it's for a proposed mixed-use commercial building, and the proponent has provided with a bit of some elevations and schematics, which was just recently passed around. The proposed use is permitted as of right on the subject lands, and the proposed amendment is a bit of a housekeeping matter and will clean up the existing zoning provisions that are on the property. There are some site-specific provisions that no longer apply, so those amendments are being rescinded and replaced with the two that you see before you today. The one is for an interior side yard abutting a residential zone for a portion back in the corner adjacent to Talbot Street, and the other will deem the frontage to be King Street in terms of creating the rest of the zone setbacks and provisions. The application was circulated to the various departments and agencies, and there was no concerns raised by the departments. We also received some phone calls and inquiries with some positive feedback in terms of the proposed development. I'd like to also note that there is a concurrent site plan that is being currently reviewed by staff, and based on the foregoing, staff are recommending support and approval of the application, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Shannon. Questions from council to our planner, Shannon. I have one. Just curious, is this going to be a wood construction? Do you know?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the proponent is here and would answer the construction details better, but that is my understanding.
Yeah, I'm just curious, yeah. You're still here, Mr. Rowe? That's not Mr. Durick with you, is it? No, I knew that. Okay. Do you wish to come and speak at all? If you would introduce your guest, that would be appreciated. Thank you. You have to just flip that microphone on so we can hear you. Thank you.
I'm Robert Malinowski from Dymatic Tooling Solutions. I'm the operation managers, and Dymatic is our family-owned and operated business.
You're the operation manager.
Yes.
Oh, very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you.
David?
What I guess is interesting is that the plans that we came up with help of DeMeyers and Tilsenberg as our engineers and the Venton Group in Brantford, we've almost complied with absolutely everything. So what we were doing is getting rid of the previous approvals for the previous development that did require a lot of site-specific rules. So in the end, we're basically going back to where it all began way back when. I handed out to you, and I talked to Councillor Columbus actually this morning, so it'd be really nice to have some idea what it looks like. In many ways, when you look at it, it looks like you're building over on Robinson Street, quite frankly. There is a real need for both the commercial space, which could primarily be offices and dentists and things like that, but also for the apartments. And having talked to your housing people, the rents are, while won't fall under the affordable housing policy, but rents generally themselves in our area are quite reasonable. So it's going to provide, and having talked to people in town, people are most eager to consider moving into this facility. This has been a real, I guess, eyesore for years, being the old foundry. And then having finally removed, and then I guess the previous owner who actually removed everything and cleaned it up, which was a tremendous asset to the community. And then finding a buyer, and in this case, somebody that already has experience in Delhi. He owns the former Simcoe Neary building, which again was a dentist's insurance office with apartments. He basically totally redid that building, and again has a lineup of lists of people that would like to move into that building as well as into this building. So that was very positive, actually not somebody looking to flip a property, somebody willing to invest in the community. So we're very thankful, I guess, and very lucky to have Robert come along. Robert can answer some detailed questions in terms of the construction. You'll note that the parking is all off of Talbot Road, and we're very careful to place the entrance so that it won't interfere with Murphy Funeral Home, which at times can have a bit of a traffic jam in Delhi. It does seem to happen. There will be, we have submitted landscaping plans, as well as discussion of a sign that will go close, I guess, to the bridge, a large sign that will be promoting local events and that type of thing, welcoming people to Delhi as kind of a gateway sign that will provide and help sell Delhi as a community. So we're really pleased with that, and I know Robert has done quite a bit of discussion with the planning department, but also the public works department related to signs, as well as dealing with your economic development people. They're very supportive of that. So I'll let Robert speak about the building.
Thank you.
Like David mentioned, we purchased the building at 334 James Street about 4 years ago. It was in a really rough shape, leaking water, everything pretty much falling apart. We redid everything. We replaced the windows, roof, all the kitchens, bathrooms, made this building like new. Currently, we have a waiting list for people that want to move in. Through cleaning up the building, we were able to get really good tenants, and like I said, we have a waiting list, and that's what made us think about purchasing that piece of land and developing. Our family is into business of machining and die building. This project is completely new to us, so we're learning every step of the way. They've been working with me and directed me into VG Group and Jade Engineering that does all our mechanical. This is really new project for Dymatic Tooling Solutions and my family, but I'm really looking forward to making a beautiful place for everybody in the community. In the plans it shows we will have a park accessible to everybody, not only the tenants in our building, for the people that's going to be using the commercial spaces, shoppers, people that just want to come relax and enjoy our landscaping, and not sure what else to say.
Well, that's very good. Thank you. There may be some questions. Any questions? Staff, Mr. Black?
Mayor Luke, thank you. Are there any balconies on this at all?
No.
No balconies? What about the sidewalk?
Yes,
Like,
so
the sidewalk, will it wrap all the way around the building from?
all the way around the building and all the way to the edge of the property, and then it takes a turn through the park at the peak corner there.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking of accessibility. I sit on the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and I think there was some discussion about how they might get across the road. Is there any place where they can access, like from the sidewalk across the road? Would they go like a wheelchair or something up to the driveway and then across, or?
Yeah, we're replacing like all the concrete and everything that's there, so all of that is being taken into consideration, as well as within the building itself, there will be an elevator to provide access to the various floors. So it will be very handicap accessible. That's
Okay.
part of what we have to do these days, so.
Okay. And this is a condominium corporation?
No.
It's not.
It's going to be strictly rental.
Okay. I thought I saw the word condo on here somewhere.
No.
It's just the side view shows the foundry condo. That's when we started talking, so everybody kind of
Okay.
calls this project by the same name. It just came like this in the initial drawing and stays on it. I will actually like to change it someday to Romans Point. My dad immigrated to this country in 1989, passed away in 1995. I came to this country in 1992. That was the point of him coming, for us to be able to do better in our life, and someday I'm hoping to change this name to Romans Point, which is the property. It's pointy and
Well, it looks like a great addition to Delhi, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Councillor Columbus?
Mayor, we recently received words from the province that there's going to be dollars for upgrading King Street. And the terrain in front of this place where the foundry was is kind of rough looking. Been that way for a long time. So I think it's important for you to communicate with Public Works to make sure the elevations are right. And I don't know when King Street's going to go under total rehabilitation, but it should be within a year or two for sure. So it'd be important for you to communicate with them to make sure everything lines up properly.
Yeah, that's good advice, thanks.
And when it came to the sidewalk, the plan is actually to have the sidewalk to keep the existing sidewalk as is, and then make all new sidewalks around the building and inside, so it would be whatever sidewalks are there, and then additional new concrete sidewalks on the property. So we're not planning to change any from the existing sidewall. If necessary, we'll do, but the plan is to put all new.
Just one more. When do you anticipate construction to start, and when do you anticipate it would be completed for
I'm
occupancy?
still hopeful to do the grading and retaining walls and whatever. So I'm planning to build this in 3 stages. So the stage 1 would be grading, foundations, site preparation, drainage, all the services, which I'm still hoping to finish this year. Next year I would like to put a shell and finish everything on the outside. So to all the people that live in Norfolk County, it looks like it's completely finished. And then the 3rd stage, go inside and finish everything ready for occupancy. So we would like to be up and running in end of 2020, early 2021.
Councillor Oliver? Pass. Dave, just 2 quick questions. One is, I note, and rightfully so, that there's entrances both off Talbot Road and Street and number 3. Will they be 2-way in and out on both of those entrances?
Yes, there will be.
Okay, I think that's good. There'll be both of them pretty busy spots. The other question ties into, as Councillor Thomas was saying about the sidewalks and that, I would think there's a fair amount of fill required to be brought in to bring that up to a level grade. Is that?
Well, yes and no. Part of the situation is that when the old building was removed, some of the remnants were left there, so some will have to be removed. I'm not totally sure how it's going to work in terms of the amount of fill. And the lot also slopes to the west as well, so it's kind of built. It'll be a bit of a challenge, but we'll work that out as we go.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you. I would invite anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of this application to come forward.
Yes, Joe Murphy from Delhi, representing Murphy Funeral Home. I am in favor, I guess, because I'm certainly not against. I looked at the foundry there for over 50 years, and I was so glad when it was gone. So I have a good neighbor policy, so I'm welcoming the new developer as well as, supporting Mr. Johnson at the other end of the lot. The foundry itself, our family moved there in 1958, and then it expanded again under Mr. Colburn. The old rule was that probably if you were going to hire 50 workers, you could build anywhere. I know for a fact because my father gave them a quick deed. The point where the sign was, "Welcome to Delhi," was originally part of the funeral home deed. And over the years, having looked at the foundry and going back also to the time when the other owner had it and he was applying for variances, that there was all kinds of misshapes and building irregularities on the Talbot Road end, many encroachments, matter of fact. His name was Mr. Gates. And we spoke about that on many occasions, including Mr. Beard, who was with the roads and that, back when we resurfaced the area about 4 or 5 years ago. The only thing really that's stable in that area between the two buildings our property and where the foundry was is the wall that's in front of the funeral home, and I know because I paid to have it restored, and we spent a lot of money on that with the engineers and everything, and including a building permit until I found out I didn't need one, so I fired the engineer. The wall was built originally by the Morgan family back in 1938-39, and it's still in the same spot. The only thing that keeps moving is the road. Every time they pave the road, they move it over 3 or 4 inches towards the funeral home. And they've done that maybe 3 or 4 times since I've been there, to the point that when they resurfaced it the last time, I asked I think it was the county, why they didn't paint parking lines there, and it was because there was a liability that if somebody opened the door up, another car might hit it and the county would be liable. What I'm really anxious about, and I'm so glad to see it being developed, is the Talbot Road itself. It's got more history than number 3 highway has because it's been there longer probably. It is an important road in Delhi. Most of the cars that come from Tilsonburg have learned that if they don't want to face the stoplights in Delhi, they use Talbot Road as a bypass. It's even used by people going from Tilsonburg to La Salette, and meets up with the swimming pool at the cemetery. They even use it for agricultural means. Mr. Vandenheed moves all his agricultural equipment from the Norwich Road to the swimming pool road. For 30 years, we used Talbot Road as an ambulance route to get out of town quickly if we were going east, either out to the Brantford Road, or if we were going south towards Turkey Point Way. We always used the Talbot Road to get out so we didn't get bottlenecked uptown. What I'm really concerned about is the irregularity on the Talbot Road that existed when the foundry was there, and whether or not the frontage or the county road allowance is still there. I was expecting, maybe I just got back from Florida yesterday, maybe I only saw stakes at the west end of the lot, but now that I've learned that they're going to build a sidewalk around, the idea is that you only get one chance to recover the county property that was probably utilized back when the foundry was there, and squeeze the road. They even put the telephone poles on the right-of-way. The setback on the property includes parallel parking on one side. What I'm trying to get at is that I don't know whose responsibility is to recapture or re-regulate Talbot Road to its original steps. I know I went to Langton, to the planning office down there back in November, and the nice lady really looked after me well. And when I came away from there, they didn't have any records or diagrams that went back to the 50s, so I'd have to seek it out either from a surveyor or go to the registry office. And I was thinking I'd phone Mr. Rowe to do that for me, and I found out when I got back he's working for the other guy. The heavy traffic that's on Talbot Road now, and I only have Mr. Columbus maybe to confirm that, is twice as much as it used to be even 10 years ago. Up Talbot Road, we have parallel parking on some of the one side of the street or the other, and we got two churches going up there even on a Sunday. It has to be done very carefully. And now that we got this big new medical center, the traffic even increased more. And people from the west coming into Delhi, even to the medical center, have got smart. They use Talbot Road as a bypass. And so that's another thing. And every time, Delhi has some kind of a parade or a function, like Harvest Fest and the Christmas parade, even when they had the Legion thing in front of the Cenotaph, they always put up barricades, and you can hardly get two transport trucks going in the opposite direction on that road. Thanks to the county, they moved a sign that said hidden driveway so that the transport truck can get into the funeral home when they're making deliveries for our casket supplies. I had a real big fight with Canada Post. I had to fight with the girl because she was going to put the mailbox, I think it holds about 30 or 40 boxes in it, and I had to get her to move it instead of leaving it on the corner, because people park on the roadway there when they stop and get the mail. It's only been since the construction of Mill Street that the construction company left a bunch of gravel behind the mailbox that people have been pulling off. Let me make it short. We must recapture any of the county property along there. I think it can be looked at. I think you can have parallel parking on one side of the street, especially on the south side of the Talbot Road. We need to go back and find out what the original plans were and what the right-of-ways were. We have only one chance to recover the county land rather than expropriate it, and I think we've got to be fair to the new developer. If somebody's got a road plan that they wanted to put parallel parking there, that they should do so, and do so soon. I understand there was also supposed to be a traffic survey done. And if the planning department is correct, you can regulate, get the regulations on the road and put it back properly, because in my experience, when they put the curbs in as well as the drain behind the foundry, they did so because there was a big flood and the foundry got flooded out, and they put the drain in after the foundry was there. So all that stuff is good, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy, and on your bringing to our attention the reclaiming of the road allowance. I want to say, Shannon, you're aware of this situation, and I think when I look at map 3 on page 256, Mr. Murphy's, it's obvious on there that we've lost quite a bit of the road or road allowance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is, Talbot Street does have a very wide road right-of-way, and Ms. Robinson has some additional details on this. There has been some kind of communications very recently with respect to that road allowance, and Lee would probably be able to answer that better.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Murphy? Thank you very much, Mr. Murphy, for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else in attendance who would like to speak in support of this application? Is there anyone in attendance this evening that wishes to speak in general or in opposition? In general or in opposition to the application? Anything further from this council? Councillor Black.
Mr. Mayor, can we ask through you to Lee about the road allowance there? Has it been identified and we know where it is, what's ours and what's theirs?
Through the chairman to council, or sorry, through the mayor to council, I believe that there's, for lack of a better phrase, just some confusion with respect to some of the items. Our road allowance there is 20 meters. It's actually the appropriate size. It's there. I believe what Mr. Murphy's referring to is that the road is no longer centered in the right-of-way. In fact, if you look at some of the drawings that have been attached to the report, example on page 256 of your agenda, there's sort of an aerial picture, and right above the subject lands, you can see the property line on the south side of Talbot. It's very clear we have a significant piece of road allowance that is there. There isn't any road allowance to reclaim. The drawings that the applicant has provided indicates the same thing, that that's where the road allowance is. So I believe it's just a perception and it's not an actual statement of it being real.
Mr. Columbus?
So with that, to Lee, Mr. Murphy mentioned it, and it is a very busy spot with the medical center being in that area, and it will be busier yet. Is there allowance then that we could have some parallel parking in that area? When you look at that diagram on page 256, it's quite wide.
Sorry, through the mayor to council, the application before you this evening is for zoning. All of the questions with respect to the right-of-way width and to the parking and to the entrances and to servicing, all of that is, and the traffic and who's going to have entrances where, none of that stuff is reviewed as part of zoning application. It's all stuff that we absolutely address during site plan control. We certainly believe that the plan that they have in front of you here today is a very feasible one, that the county very much wishes to move forward. But this is really just dealing with the zoning so that they're actually able to move to the site plan stage, so that we can certainly address all of those things with respect to parking on the right-of-ways and any of those other sorts of things. It's just premature at this point to look at that, because that's really not the process that we have in place.
Thank you.
Anything else from council? I would look then for a mover and seconder to close this public meeting. Black has moved and Hyde has seconded that we close the public meeting. Those in favor? It's carried. What's your wishes, gentlemen? Councillor Columbus?
Mr. Mayor, I would move approval of the recommendation.
Thank you, and Black has seconded. Columbus and Black, that the application Diamatic Tooling Solutions of Breslaw, Ontario, affecting the lands described as part of lots 4, 6, Lot 5, Block 12, Plan 189, urban area of Delhi, Norfolk County, to amend our zoning bylaw 1Z 2014. The file numbers are there. Be approved for reasons as set out in the report. And that we did receive public input on the application, and it would be considered as part of the decision. Discussion. Councillor Columbus? Yes. Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion? It's carried. Thank you. And Councillor Columbus, like yourself, you're always being asked, when is this going to get developed? When's this going to get developed? And I always smile and say, good things come for those that wait. And I think this is proof and is worth waiting for into this gateway of downtown Delhi. It's going to be super. So we thank you for that. Council, before I proceed with the last application, I make the time about 8:50. I would like to do this application this evening. Keep that handy. We will need it. Would also indicate that the clerk has asked that 3 or 4 other small housekeeping items, such as approving the CIC minutes from last week, we do that before we do the confirming bylaw. But I'll get to that in a moment. I think once we get through this application, we will not be too much longer, but I'll ask you to go more than likely beyond 9 o'clock. Let's go then, please, to our final application on page 259. This is DCS 1841. An application has been received to consider an amendment to our Norfolk County official plan to permit a single detached dwelling within hazard land designation. A concurrent application to the Norfolk County zoning bylaw 1Z 2014 has been also submitted. Samuel Michael Vincent Anstey and Agent Brimage Law Group has put forth the application, and this affects the lands described as 138 Brown Street. And Shannon, if you want to give your report, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This presentation is with respect to a proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment to rezone and redesignate the subject lands from hazard land to an urban residential development to permit the construction of a single detached dwelling. Subject lands are located on Brown Street within Port Dover and are currently vacant. They are adjacent to Lake Erie and designated and zoned hazard land. The proposed amendment would see the rezoning and redesignation to the urban residential designation and urban residential R1 zone to facilitate the development. There are no other site-specific provisions proposed through the zoning amendment. The application was circulated to the various departments and agencies, and concerns were raised by both the Long Point Region Conservation Authority and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. It is noted that the construction of the dwelling is considered within the stable top of bank, and the stable slope setback extends onto and beyond Brown Street. Based on the submitted information and review in terms of the provincial policy statement, the Norfolk County official planning staff do not support the application. There is specific policies that deal with development when we're dealing with hazardous areas, and the proposal is not considered to conform to the official plan or the provincial policy statement. Based on the foregoing, staff are, again, not recommending support of the application, but I am happy to answer questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from council members? Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Through you to Shannon, can you jump back one slide, please? I must be seeing things in there. I see 2 houses to the right of the square box, and I don't know, they look very similar. How did they get built?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are dwellings existing on either side of the property that were constructed prior to the current policy framework.
Roughly, do you know the date of construction?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I do not.
Oh, okay. So, I've looked over these reports here, and I see that, you know, they've had the slope stability analysis done, and they were recommending 6 meters. And that further in the report, even though this is a 13-meter bank, they're recommending a 30-meter setback from that. That's never going to work in this area. So how did we get it determined where it's going to be a 30-meter setback?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in terms of the 30-meter setback, that is setbacks that have been identified with the work of the Long Point Region Conservation Authority in terms of the setback from the stable top of bank.
And that's what they're addressing as an erosion hazard. So technically, none of those houses would qualify at the 30 meters, I'm assuming.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, so what is the major concern with this not being approved? The erosion hazard?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in terms of the policy, we have specific direction from the provincial policy statement as well as our official plan that addresses construction within known hazardous areas, which includes erosion or lake impacts, which the property is considered to be subject to.
Okay, now in the provincial policy statement, it does say to address the hazard. that is one of the options. I see it's cut out on these particular documents. But in here in the geotech, it also says, providing erosion protection is maintained at the toe of the slope to eliminate the erosion setback allowance. So if there's shoreline protection